had never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The great hall of the empire stretched before her like a dream made of crystal and starlight. The walls were not walls at all, but massive windows that looked out into the black emptiness of space. 1,000 stars glittered beyond the glass, and 3 moons hung in the darkness like silver coins. She stood near the back of the Earth delegation, trying to make herself as small as possible. She was just a translator, nothing more. Her job was to listen, to speak when spoken to, and to help bridge the gap between human words and ones. She was not important. She was not supposed to be noticed. The themselves were impossible to ignore. They stood taller than any human, their bodies long and graceful like living sculptures. Their skin came in shades of deep purple and midnight blue, and their eyes glowed with inner light. Gold and silver patterns marked their faces, unique to each individual like fingerprints. They moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing they ruled one of the largest empires in the known galaxy. And at the center of it all, seated on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, was Empress. Had seen pictures of her, of course. Everyone on Earth had. When the first made contact with humanity 5 years ago, the Empress had been the subject of endless news reports and scientific papers. But no picture could capture what it felt like to be in the same room as her. Was magnificent. Her skin was the color of a night sky just before dawn, deep purple fading into hints of blue. The patterns on her face were pure gold, swirling across her cheeks and forehead like flames frozen in time. Her eyes were the most striking part of her. They glowed amber like 2 small suns, and when she looked at something, it felt like being touched by fire. The diplomatic banquet had been going on for 3 hours now. Earth's ambassador, a nervous man named Director, had given his speech. The High Council had responded with their own. Trade agreements were discussed. Military boundaries were debated. It was all very proper and very boring. Had done her job well. She had translated every word perfectly, catching the subtle meanings that the universal translators often missed. The spoke in layers. Their language had words within words, meanings hidden inside other meanings. Machines could not understand them fully. That was why human translators were still needed. Now the formal part of the evening was over. The delegates mingled, forming small groups throughout the hall. Servants moved between them, offering food and drinks that glittered with strange colors. Music played from somewhere, soft and haunting, unlike anything had ever heard. She had retreated to a quiet corner near one of the great windows. She held a glass of something purple in her hands, though she had not taken a single sip. She did not trust alien drinks. She did not trust much of anything on this station. The other humans from the delegation were busy networking, trying to make connections with nobles. That was not her job. Her job was done for the night. All she wanted was to stand here quietly until the event was over, then return to her small cabin on the Earth ship and sleep. A commotion near the center of the hall caught her attention. One of the servants had dropped a tray. Cups and plates crashed to the floor, sending shards of crystal sliding across the smooth surface. The music stopped. Every eye in the room turned toward the sound. The servant was young, could tell. Among the young ones had patterns that were still forming, incomplete swirls that would fill in with age. This one was barely more than a child, and she was trembling. The nobles nearby stepped back as if the servant carried disease. Their faces showed disgust. One of them, a tall male with silver patterns, raised his hand. "Clumsy creature," he said, his voice cold. "You have embarrassed the Empire before our guests." The servant dropped to her knees. Her body shook with fear. "Forgive me, my lord, please forgive me." "Forgiveness," the noble laughed. It was not a kind sound. "You will be removed from service. Perhaps manual labor in the outer colonies will teach you proper care." His heart clenched. The outer colonies. She had heard stories about them. They were mining operations on dead worlds, places where workers lived short and painful lives. Sending this child there was not punishment, it was a death sentence. Before she knew what she was doing was walking forward. Her legs moved on their own. Her mind screamed at her to stop, to go back to her corner, to stay invisible, but her body did not listen. She reached the servant and knelt down beside her. The girl looked up with wide, terrified eyes, smiled gently and began picking up the broken pieces. "It is all right," said softly in. "Everyone drops things sometimes. It is not the end of the world." The hall went completely silent, could feel hundreds of eyes on her. She ignored them. She focused on the broken cups, on the trembling girl beside her, on the simple task of cleaning up a mess. "Human," the noble's voice was sharp with anger. "What do you think you are doing?" Looked up at him. He towered over her, his eyes blazing with offense. She should have been afraid. She was afraid. But she had learned long ago that fear was not a reason to stop doing what was right. "I am helping," she said simply. "Is that not allowed?" The noble sputtered. No one spoke to lords this way. Certainly not humans, a species that they considered barely civilized. "You dare!" "Enough!" The single word cut through the hall like a blade. It was not loud, but it carried power that made everyone freeze. Felt it in her bones, a vibration that seemed to come from the very walls of the station. Empress had risen from her throne. She walked forward, and the crowd parted before her like water. Her movements were slow, graceful, almost hypnotic. With each step, the light in the room seemed to bend toward her as if even photons could not resist her presence. She stopped directly in front of. His heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She forced herself to stand, to meet those burning amber eyes. Protocol said she should bow. Protocol said she should look at the floor, but something in her refused to look away. Studied her for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. The gold patterns on her skin seemed to shift and flow, though that might have been imagination. "You are the translator," said. Her voice was like music played on instruments that did not exist on Earth. "Yes, Your Majesty." His voice came out steadier than she expected. "I watched you tonight. Your translations were perfect. You understand our language better than any human I have encountered," tilted her head slightly. "But that is not why you caught my attention." Said nothing. She did not trust herself to speak. "Just now you helped one of my servants, a person you do not know, a person who could do nothing for you in return, a person most beings in this room consider beneath notice." His eyes seemed to glow brighter. Why? Thought about the question. There were many answers she could give. Political answers, diplomatic answers, safe answers that would not cause problems for Earth. Instead, she told the truth. Because she was scared, said, and because being scared should not be a crime. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The noble who had threatened the servant looked like he wanted to sink through the floor, but his face changed. Something shifted in those ancient eyes, something that might have been surprise or wonder or something could not name. Smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look almost young. "Walk with me," she said. It was not a request. Glanced back at Director. His face was pale, his eyes wide with panic. He made frantic gestures that clearly meant, "Do whatever she says and do not make this worse." Turned back to the Empress and nodded. They walked together through the hall. The crowd stayed frozen, watching, led toward a balcony that extended out over the stars. When they stepped outside, the noise of the banquet faded away. It was just the two of them, surrounded by the infinite darkness of space. "Do you know why the Empire has lasted for 10,000 years?" asked, gazing out at the stars. "No, Your Majesty." "Because we are strong, because we are ruthless, because we do what must be done without sentiment, without weakness." Turn to look at. "Compassion is a flaw among my people, a defect to be corrected. Children who show too much of it are trained until they learn to hide it, or until they learn to stop feeling it entirely." Felt cold despite the regulated temperature of the station. That sounds very lonely. It is. His voice was soft now, almost sad. I have ruled for 300 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have made decisions that ended billions of lives and saved billions more. I have done terrible things for the good of my people. She paused. And in all that time, I have never once seen someone do what you just did, help a stranger for no reason, with no reward. It is a very human thing, said. We do it all the time. Yes, I'm beginning to understand that. Moved closer, close enough that could feel the strange warmth that radiated from skin. May I ask you something? Of course, Your Majesty. His amber eyes locked onto hers. The gold patterns on her face glowed softly in the starlight. Are you unattached, human? The question hit like a physical blow. She blinked, certain she had misheard. I am sorry. Unattached, unbonded, without a mate. His expression was calm, patient, as if she had asked about the weather. Are you available? Behind them, through the glass doors, could see the entire hall staring at them. Director looked like he might faint. Several nobles had their mouths hanging open in shock. Turned back to the Empress. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening. Yes, she managed. I am single, I mean unattached, I am unattached. Smiled again. This time it was a different kind of smile, warmer, more personal. Good, she said, that is very good. The Empress turned and walked back toward the hall. At the doorway, she paused and looked over her shoulder. The banquet will continue for several more hours. I expect you to stay. We have much to discuss, you and I. Then she was gone, gliding back to her throne as if nothing unusual had happened. Stood on the balcony, alone with the stars, her heart pounding and her mind spinning. She had come here to translate words. Now she was not sure what language could possibly help her understand what had just happened. Behind her, the universe stretched out endlessly. Before her, something even more frightening waited. An alien queen who had looked at her and seen something worth wanting. Took a deep breath and walked back into the light. The hours after the Empress's question were the longest of his life. She returned to the banquet as commanded, but nothing was the same. Before, she had been invisible. Now, every in the room stared at her as if she had grown a second head. Director found her within minutes. His face was pale and sweating, and he grabbed her arm with trembling fingers. What did she say to you? He demanded. What did you say to her? The entire diplomatic mission could be at stake. Years of work, years. She asked if I was single, said. Director stared at her. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. I told her yes, added. The director made a strangled sound and walked away, watched him go and felt a strange urge to laugh. None of this felt real. It felt like a dream, the kind that made no sense but kept going anyway. The rest of Earth's delegation kept their distance. They whispered to each other and shot her looks that ranged from confusion to jealousy to fear. Did not blame them. She did not understand what was happening either. At some point, a servant approached her. Not the young girl she had helped, but an older female with complete silver patterns covering her face. The Empress requests your presence in the private chambers, the servant said. Her voice was polite but cold. You will follow me. Followed. They walked through corridors that grew quieter and more beautiful as they moved deeper into the station. The public areas had been impressive, but these private halls were something else entirely. The walls were alive with light that shifted and changed like the northern lights on Earth. Plants did not recognize grew from crystal containers, their leaves glowing with soft colors. The air smelled sweet, like flowers that bloomed only in dreams. Finally, they reached a door that looked like it was made of liquid gold. The servant touched it, and it flowed open like water parting. Enter, she said. The Empress waits. Stepped through. The room beyond was not what she expected. She had imagined a throne room, something grand and intimidating. Instead, she found herself in a space that felt almost comfortable. soft furniture that looked like clouds made solid, walls of windows showing the stars, gentle light that came from everywhere and nowhere. Books lined the walls, thousands of them, in languages could not read. Empress stood by one of the windows, her back to the door. She had changed from her formal robes into something simpler, a flowing garment of deep blue that moved with her body like it was part of her. "Close the door," said without turning around. Obeyed, the golden door flowed shut behind her, sealing them in together. Said, "Please." There was that word again, please. Had noticed it during the banquet, rarely said please. It was considered unnecessary among a species that valued strength above all else. Requests were commands, and commands needed no softening. Sat on something that looked like a chair but felt like sitting on a warm cloud. She sank into it slightly, surrounded by comfort. Finally turned. In the soft light of the room she looked different than she had in the great hall, less like an empress, more like a woman. "I have frightened you," said. "That was not my intent." "You surprised me," corrected gently. "That is not the same as frightening me." Tilted her head. The gold patterns on her face caught the starlight and glowed. "You are either very brave or very foolish. I cannot decide which." "Probably both," admitted. Something that might have been a laugh escaped lips. She moved across the room and sat in a chair across from, close enough to touch but not touching. "I owe you an explanation," said. "What I asked you at the banquet was improper. Among my people, such questions are never asked publicly. They are matters of private negotiation between families, handled by intermediaries over the course of years." "But you are the empress," said. "You can do what you want." "Yes and no," sighed. It was a very human sound full of weariness. "I can command armies, I can destroy planets, I can make laws that affect trillions of lives, but I cannot command my own heart. That has always been beyond my power." His breath caught your heart. Met her eyes. Those amber depths seemed to burn with something had never seen before, something raw and honest and completely unguarded. "I have been watching humanity for 5 years now. Ever since our scouts first discovered your little world, I have been fascinated by your species. You are so young, so fragile. Your lives are over almost as soon as they begin by our standards. You have no great technology, no empire, no power that should matter to us." Leaned forward. "And yet you do things that my people cannot understand. You help each other. You sacrifice for strangers. You love without calculation." "We are not always like that," said quietly. "Humans can be cruel too. We have wars, we have hatred." "I know, I have studied your history. It is filled with darkness," smiled slightly. "But it is also filled with light. That is what amazes me. You know what evil looks like. You have experienced it, created it, suffered from it. And still you choose kindness. Over and over again your species chooses kindness." Did not know what to say. She had never thought of humanity that way. From the inside, all she could see was the struggle, the pain, the endless failures. But from the outside, from the perspective of an ancient being who had watched civilizations rise and fall. "Tonight at the banquet I saw something I have not seen in centuries," continued. "That servant girl who dropped the tray, her name is Myra. She is an orphan from one of our outer worlds. She has no family, no protection, no value in the eyes of my court. When she made her mistake, she was already dead. My nobles would have sent her away, and she would have died in the mines within a year." "That seems very harsh," said. "It is our way. The weak are not protected. They are removed so they do not weaken the whole." His voice was flat, stating facts without emotion. "I have never questioned it. I was raised to believe it was necessary, even right." "And then I helped her," said. "And then you helped her." Eyes softened. "You walked into a room full of beings who could crush you without effort. You knew the risk. You knew everyone was watching. And you chose to kneel beside a frightened child and tell her it was all right." "I could not just stand there." "No, you could not," reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm, almost hot, like holding a cup of tea on a cold day. "That is what I saw. That is what made me ask my question. I saw a human who could not stand there while someone suffered. I saw compassion that would not be silenced by fear. Looked down at their joined hands. His fingers were longer than hers, the skin smooth and marked with swirling patterns of gold. It was strange. It should have felt strange, but somehow it just felt right. I still do not understand, admitted. You are the empress of one of the greatest powers in the galaxy. You could have anyone. Why would you want me? Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I am tired. The words hung in the air between them, waited. I have ruled for 300 years, continued. I have outlived 2 husbands. Both were political matches arranged for the good of the empire. I did not love them and they did not love me. They feared me as everyone fears me. They respected me. They obeyed me, but they never, she trailed off. They never saw you, finished softly. They saw the empress, not. Looked at her with something like wonder. Yes, exactly that. But I am nobody, protested. I am just a translator. I have no power, no wealth, no influence. I am not even beautiful by human standards. You are wrong about several of those things, said. But even if you were right, it would not matter. I do not want power, I have power. I do not want wealth, I have wealth. I do not want influence. She squeezed his hand. I want someone who will look at me without fear. Someone who will speak truth to me instead of lies designed to please. Someone who will see a scared child and choose to help, even when the whole universe is watching. His heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. This is insane. Perhaps. We barely know each other. True. I might be terrible. I might be boring. I might drive you crazy within a week. Laughed. It was a real laugh this time, warm and genuine and completely unexpected. Then we will have a very interesting week. Could not help it. She laughed too. The absurdity of it all bubbled up inside her and spilled out. Here she was, a girl from a small town in Korea who had studied languages because she liked words, sitting in an alien palace holding hands with an empress who ruled half the galaxy. This is not how diplomatic missions usually go, said when she could speak again. No, I imagine not. Released her hand and stood. She walked to a small table and picked up a crystal container that held something that looked like liquid starlight. She poured 2 glasses and returned, offering one too. This is wine, said. It is safe for humans, I checked. Took the glass. The liquid inside swirled with colors that should not exist. She took a small sip. It tasted like nothing she had ever experienced, sweet and sharp and somehow warm, like drinking a sunset. There is something you should know, said, returning to her seat. My proposal to you is real, but it is not simple. If you agree to be my consort, it will change everything. For you, for your people, for my people. I assumed as much. My nobles will not accept you easily. They see humans as lesser beings. The idea of one sitting beside their empress will offend them deeply. His expression hardened. They will challenge it. They will challenge you. What does that mean? There is a tradition among my people. When a consort is chosen who does not have the approval of the court, that consort must prove their worth. They must complete the trials of the empress. Felt a chill run down her spine. Trials. Tests of strength, wisdom, and heart. They were designed long ago to ensure that only the worthy could stand beside the throne. Amber eyes were serious. I will be honest with you. No outsider has ever attempted the trials. I do not know if a human could survive them. But you are asking me anyway. I am telling you what you would face. The choice is yours. Set down her glass. I will not force you. I will not command you. If you wish to return to your ship and pretend this night never happened, I will allow it. Your people will not be punished. The diplomatic mission will continue. Everything will go on as it was. Looked at her wine. The colors swirled and danced, beautiful and impossible. And if I say yes, she asked. Then tomorrow, before the entire court, I will formally propose that you become my royal consort. My nobles will demand the trials. You will have to accept." Leaned forward. "It will be the hardest thing you have ever done. It may kill you, but if you succeed." "If I succeed." Smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Then you will be mine, and I will be yours, and together we will change the galaxy." Took another sip of her wine. It burned going down, but it was a good burn, a brave burn. She thought about her life back on Earth, her small apartment, her quiet job, her evenings spent alone with books and dreams of adventures she would never have. She thought about the scared girl in the hall, trembling on her knees. She thought about an empress who ruled trillions, but was tired of being feared. "I need to think," said finally. "Of course," nodded. "You have until morning. Whatever you decide, I will respect it." She stood and offered her hand, took it and rose. They stood close, closer than before, and could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Thank you," said softly, "for listening, for not running away, for being exactly what you are." "What am I?" Reached out and touched his cheek. Her fingers were gentle, impossibly gentle for someone who had the power to destroy worlds. "Human," she said, "wonderfully, beautifully, impossibly human." Then she stepped back and the moment broke. A servant appeared to guide back to her quarters. That night, alone in her small cabin on the Earthship, lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come. Her mind spun with everything that had happened, everything that might happen. She thought about trials that might kill her. She thought about an empress who wanted someone to see her. She thought about compassion and fear, and what it meant to choose kindness even when the whole universe was watching. When morning came, had made her decision. The throne room was even more crowded than it had been the night before. Word had spread through the court like fire through dry grass. The empress was going to make an announcement. Something unprecedented was happening. Stood near the entrance, dressed in the simple uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She had refused the fancy clothes that director had tried to push on her. If she was going to do this, she would do it as herself, not as someone pretending to be more than she was. Director stood beside her, looking like a man watching his career burn to ashes. He had spent the entire morning trying to talk her out of this. "You will start a war," he had said. "They will be offended. They will think we are mocking them." "The Empress asked me," had replied. Refusing might offend her more. Then refuse politely. Make excuses. Tell her you are already engaged to someone back on Earth. That would be a lie. Lies are the foundation of diplomacy. Had smiled at that. Then maybe diplomacy needs a new foundation. Now, standing in the great hall with 1,000 alien eyes watching, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Her hands were cold and shaking. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run. But she did not run. She stood her ground and waited. A horn sounded deep and resonant. The crowd parted and Empress entered. She wore robes of pure white today, a color had not seen on any. The gold patterns on her skin seemed brighter than before, almost glowing. A crown of crystal sat on her head, catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. She walked to her throne and stood before it, not sitting. Her amber eyes found immediately, and something in them softened. "My court," said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I have gathered you here to witness a declaration." Whispers rippled through the crowd. The nobles leaned forward, hungry for information. "For 300 years I have ruled alone. My consorts have been political necessities, bonds of duty rather than choice. The throne beside mine has been empty for 70 years now, waiting." Paused. "Today I choose to fill it." The whispers grew louder. Several nobles exchanged knowing looks. They had expected this, it seemed. What they did not expect came next. "I choose the human to be my royal consort." Silence. Complete absolute silence. Then the chaos began. Nobles shouted. Some stood up from their seats. Others looked at each other in horror. The word human was repeated over and over, spoken like a curse. One voice rose above the others. A male stepped forward, his silver patterns marking him as someone important, recognized him from the night before. He was Lord, one of the oldest and most powerful nobles in the court. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice dripping with false respect, "surely you jest, a human, as consort to the Empress of the people." "I do not jest, Lord," his voice was cold. "I state my intention clearly." "But it is impossible." Another noble joined in, a female with patterns of deep red. "Humans are barely civilized. They live for less than a century. Their species has achieved nothing of worth. They would pollute the royal line." "The royal line is mine to manage," said, "and what humans lack in years they make up for in other ways." Lord shook his head. "Your Majesty, forgive me, but I cannot remain silent. This choice dishonors everything our empire stands for. It dishonors your predecessors. It dishonors us all." "Then file your formal objection," said, "as is your right." His eyes gleamed. He had been waiting for this, realized. He had planned for it. "I invoke the ancient law," declared. "I demand the trials of the Empress." A murmur went through the crowd. This was what they had been expecting, what they had hoped for. His expression did not change. "The trials. You wish to subject my chosen consort to the trials." "It is tradition," said. "When a consort is contested, they must prove their worth. Unless," he smiled, "unless your Majesty wishes to set aside tradition entirely, that would certainly send a message to the court." It was a trap, could see it clearly. If refused the trials, she would look weak. She would be abandoning the traditions that held her empire together. But if she agreed, would have to face challenges designed to test, not humans. Turned to look at. In that look was a question, a final chance to back out. Stepped forward. The crowd gasped. A human walking toward the throne without being summoned. It was unthinkable. Stopped at the bottom of the steps that led to his throne. She looked up at the Empress, then turned to face Lord. "I accept the trials," she said. Her voice was steady. She had no idea how. Inside, she was terrified. But she had learned long ago that courage was not the absence of fear. It was moving forward despite it. Stared at her. His surprise was obvious. He had expected her to refuse or to beg or to run. "You accept," he repeated. "Do you even know what the trials are, human?" "I know they will be difficult," said. "I know they may kill me. But I also know that I will not hide behind my Empress to avoid them. If my worth must be proven, then I will prove it." More murmurs from the crowd. Some sounded impressed despite themselves. Recovered quickly. His smile returned, sharper than before. "Very well. The trials will commence tomorrow. 3 tests await you, human. The trial of strength, the trial of wisdom, the trial of heart." He leaned forward. "Pass all 3 and you may claim your place beside the throne. Fail even one." He drew a finger across his throat. "I understand," said. "Do you?" laughed. "No outsider has ever attempted these trials. They were designed for beings of power and age and experience. You are a child by our standards, a mayfly. What could you possibly hope to achieve?" "I hope to survive," said simply. "After that we will see." His laughter died. Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty perhaps, or a hint of respect. "Tomorrow, then," he said, "we shall see what humans are made of." He turned and walked back to his place among the nobles. The crowd buzzed with conversation. Bets were probably already being placed, thought. She wondered what her odds were. A hand touched her shoulder, had descended from her throne and now stood beside her. "Walk with me," the Empress said quietly. "We must prepare." They left the throne room together, the weight of 1,000 stairs following them out. The corridors were quieter here. led to a garden that existed inside the station, a massive space filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Water flowed somewhere nearby, and strange birds sang songs that sounded like mathematics. "You did not have to do that," said when they were alone. "Yes, I did. Wanted you to accept. He believes the trials will kill you." His voice was tight with anger. "He is probably right." "Then why did you let me accept?" Stopped walking. She turned to face, and her amber eyes were filled with pain. "Because if I had stopped you, I would have proven them right. Humans are not capable of standing beside us. They must be protected, managed, controlled. That is what they believe." She reached out and took his hands. "But you are not weak. You proved that last night. You proved it again just now. If I protect you from the trials, I take away your chance to prove it to everyone." Understood, it was a paradox. To protect her was to insult her. To let her face death was to respect her. "Tell me about the trials," she said. "All of them, leave nothing out." Nodded, they walked deeper into the garden, and she began to explain. "The trial of strength is exactly what it sounds like. You will face a challenge of physical power. In the past, this has meant combat, lifting impossible weights, enduring incredible pain. The form changes each time, chosen by the one who invoked the trials." "Will choose?" "Yes, he will choose something designed to break you." Nodded, she had expected as much. "And the trial of wisdom. A test of knowledge and mental ability. Logic puzzles, strategic thinking, sometimes debate. The mind is more complex than the human mind in certain ways. Our language alone has 17 tenses and 400 emotional modifiers. I speak. You speak it beautifully, but speaking and thinking are different things." His expression was worried. "This trial is designed to challenge what it might do to a human brain." "I will manage," said. She sounded more confident than she felt. "The third trial is the trial of heart. It is different." Paused, choosing her words carefully. "It tests not what you can do, but who you are, your character, your core, your deepest self. It is different for everyone who takes it. No one knows what form it will take until they are in it." "That sounds terrifying." "It is. Many who pass the first 2 trials fail the third, not because they are weak, but because they cannot face themselves." Was quiet for a moment. She thought about herself, her core, her deepest self. What would the trial find there? What secrets would it drag into the light? "There is one more thing you should know," said. "The trials have killed before, many times. If you are seriously injured, I cannot intervene. The laws forbid it. Even if you are dying, I must watch and do nothing." "I understand." "Do you?" His voice cracked. "Do you understand what you are asking me to do? To stand there and watch while you fight for your life? To see you in pain and not be able to help?" Looked at her. This ancient being, this ruler of empires, this woman who had destroyed worlds and commanded fleets. And in this moment she looked afraid, not for herself but for. "Is this what human love feels like?" whispered. "This terror, this helplessness." Stepped closer. She reached up and touched his face, tracing the golden patterns that swirled across her cheek. "Sometimes," she said, "but it is worth it. At least that is what humans believe." "How can anything be worth this?" Smiled. "Ask me again after I survive the trials." Laughed, though it sounded more like a sob. "You are so confident." "No, I am terrified, but I have decided to do this anyway." Dropped her hand. "Will you help me prepare?" "I will do everything I can." "Then tell me more. Tell me everything about culture, history, psychology. Tell me about what he wants, how he thinks. Tell me about your people and what makes them strong." His eyes hardened with determination. "They think humans are weak. They think I will fail. Let us prove them wrong." They spent the rest of the day in the garden. Talked and listened, absorbing information like a sponge. The stars wheeled overhead, artificial day giving way to artificial night, and still they talked. By morning, knew more about the Empire than any human alive. She knew their history, their legends, their strengths and weaknesses. She knew what made them proud and what made them ashamed. She also knew she was probably going to die. But she had made her choice. She would face the trials. She would fight for her place beside the woman who had looked at her and seen something worth wanting. And if she failed, at least she would fail as herself, not as a coward, not as someone who ran from difficulty, but as human who walked into the fire because she believed it was right. The first trial awaited. The arena was ancient. It had been built in the early days of the Empire when the still settled disputes with blood rather than politics. The walls were stone, not crystal, and the floor was stained with colors that did not want to think about. Thousands of spectators filled the seats above. Every noble in the court had come to watch. Some hoped to see triumph, curious about this strange human who had caught their empress's eye. Most hoped to see her die. Stood in the center of the arena, wearing simple training clothes that had provided. They were light and flexible, designed for movement. She would need every advantage she could get. Lord's voice echoed through the space, amplified by hidden technology. The trial of strength begins. The human will face the stone warrior in single combat. She must defeat her opponent or survive for 10 minutes. Victory comes through skill, endurance, or submission. There is no surrender. A gate opened on the far side of the arena. Something massive emerged. The stone warrior was exactly what its name suggested. It was a construct, a machine built from rock and metal, shaped like a but twice as large. Its eyes glowed red, and when it moved, the ground shook. It carried no weapons. It did not need them. Its fists were larger than its entire body. The crowd roared with approval. This was what they wanted, a spectacle, a slaughter. Felt fear, cold and sharp, flooding through her. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run. This was not a fair fight. This was not even close to a fair fight. This was a human against a mountain. But she did not run. She remembered what had told her. The trials were not meant to be fair. They were meant to be survived. And survival did not always mean winning. It meant not losing. The stone warrior charged. Dove to the side. The construct's fist slammed into the ground where she had been standing, cracking the ancient stone. She rolled, came up running, put distance between herself and the monster. The crowd laughed, running away. How human. Ignored them. She watched the stone warrior, studied its movements. It was powerful, yes, incredibly powerful, but it was also slow. When it committed to an attack, it could not change direction quickly, and when it struck, there was a moment, just a moment, where it was off balance. The warrior swung again, ducked, felt the wind of its massive arm passing over her head. She darted in, touched its leg, darted back out. The crowd fell silent. What was she doing? Another swing, another dodge, another quick touch, and again, and again. Frowned from his seat in the noble's box. What is this foolishness? She cannot hurt the stone warrior with her bare hands. But was not trying to hurt it, she was learning it. 5 minutes passed, had not landed a single damaging blow. She had also not been hit. She danced around the stone warrior like a leaf in the wind, always moving, always just out of reach. The crowd began to murmur. This was not what they had expected. They had expected a quick death or perhaps a brave but futile last stand. What they got was something else entirely. Patience, strategy, a human who knew she could not win but refused to lose. At the 7-minute mark, something changed. The stone warrior's movements became slower, more deliberate. Its eyes flickered. Smiled. The constructs were powered by energy cells. Old technology, maintained but not upgraded. And energy cells, like all batteries, had limits. The stone warrior had been fighting at full power, swinging with all its might, trying to crush the annoying insect that would not stay still, and had made it waste that energy. She ran now, forcing it to chase her. Around and around the arena they went, the massive construct thundering after the tiny human. The crowd was on its feet, shouting, but could not hear them. She was focused entirely on the timing, on the rhythm, on the weakening of her enemy. 9 minutes. The stone warrior's movements became jerky, uncoordinated. Its eyes flickered rapidly. It swung at and missed by a wide margin, its arm moving through empty air. 9 minutes and 30 seconds. It stopped. The great construct stood frozen in the center of the arena, its energy finally depleted. Red eyes faded to black. The mountain became just a statue. 10 minutes. A horn sounded. The trial of strength was over. Stood in the arena, breathing hard, covered in dust and sweat. She had not defeated the stone warrior. She had outlasted it, and according to the rules, that was enough. The crowd did not know how to react. Some cheered, some booed, most just stared in disbelief. His face was a mask of barely controlled rage. "The human survives the first trial," he announced, his voice tight. "The trial of wisdom will begin in 1 hour." Was taken to a preparation room where was waiting. The Empress took her in her arms without a word and held her tightly. "You did it," breathed. "You actually did it." "I did not win," said. "You survived, that is winning," pulled back and looked at her. "How did you know about the energy cells?" "I did not know for certain, but everything has limits. I just had to find them," smiled weakly. "Also, I spent a lot of time running track in school. I always was good at endurance." Laughed. It was a beautiful sound, full of relief and joy and something that might have been pride. The trial of wisdom took place in a chamber that hurt to look at. The walls were covered in mathematical equations, historical dates, philosophical questions. Screens floated in the air, displaying puzzles of impossible complexity. Lord stood at the center, smiling again. He had recovered from his earlier frustration. This was his territory. "The trial of wisdom consists of 3 challenges," he announced. "The first is logic, the second is knowledge, the third is strategy. The human must pass at least one to proceed." At least one was being generous, or perhaps he was that confident she would fail all 3. The logic challenge was first. A complex puzzle appeared on the screen, involving shapes, patterns, and relationships that twisted in ways that made his head ache. She had 1 minute to solve it. She tried. She really tried. But the puzzle was designed for minds which processed information in fundamentally different ways. She could see the pieces, but she could not see how they connected. Time ran out. She had failed the first challenge. The knowledge challenge was next. Questions appeared rapid fire about history, science, culture. Knew some of them thanks to her studies with, but there were too many too fast. She answered correctly 60% of the time. Not enough. She had failed the second challenge. The strategy challenge was last. A game board materialized, showing a complex battlefield scenario. Was given command of a small force and told to survive against an overwhelming enemy. She studied the board. The scenario was impossible. Her forces were outnumbered 10-1, outpositioned. There was no way to win. But the challenge was not to win. It was to survive, just like the first trial. Began to move her pieces. The enemy came at her in waves, overwhelming force, crushing power. She retreated, gave ground, let them push her back. The watching expected her to be destroyed within minutes. But she was not destroyed. She kept retreating, but she retreated cleverly. She used the terrain. She sacrificed pieces to protect others. She made the enemy pay for every inch they took. 15 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. Watched with growing disbelief. The human was not winning. She was losing slowly, steadily, inevitably, but she was not losing fast. "This is absurd," he finally said. The challenge was to show strategic brilliance, not to drag out a defeat. "The challenge," said from her seat, "was to survive. She is surviving. She is delaying the inevitable." "Is that not what strategy is?" Smiled. finding ways to delay defeat until victory becomes possible. Another hour passed. Forces had been reduced to a handful, but they were still fighting, still surviving. Called an end to the challenge. The human has shown persistence, he said, the word sounding like an insult. She has technically passed the strategy challenge. The trial of wisdom is complete. The crowd murmured again. 2 trials. The human had survived 2 trials. Impossible. The trial of heart was held in a space that did not seem to exist in normal reality, was led through corridors that bent in ways they should not have, past walls that showed images of places she had never been. Finally, she entered a room that was completely empty except for a single chair. Sit said, the trial of heart is administered by the Empress herself. It is tradition. He left and was alone. Then entered. She looked different, older, harder. There was no warmth in her eyes, no gentleness in her expression. She moved like a predator circling's chair. The trial of heart, said, her voice cold, tests what you truly are, not what you pretend to be, not what you wish to be, what you are. I am ready, said. Are you? The room changed. Suddenly was no longer sitting in a chair. She was standing in a village in Korea, the village where she had grown up, but something was wrong. The buildings were burning. People were screaming. And in the center of it all stood a woman who looked exactly like her. This is your guilt's voice said, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Your deepest shame, the person you could have become if you had made different choices. The other turned to face her. Her eyes were empty, cruel. Remember me, she said. Remember what you almost were. Did remember. She remembered being young and angry, full of rage at a world that had hurt her. She remembered wanting to hurt back, to make others feel the pain she felt. She remembered the path she had almost walked. I chose differently, said. Did you? The other laughed. You chose to hide, to pretend to be kind, to wear a mask of compassion, but underneath you are still me. No, stepped forward. I am not you, I was almost you, but I chose to be something else. Prove it. The scene shifted again. Now stood in the palace and the servant girl Myra was at her feet. But this time, no one was watching. This time, helping her would gain nothing. Help her's voice commanded. Or walk away. No one will know, no one will judge. What do you choose? Did not hesitate. She knelt beside Myra and began to help. Another shift. A dying enemy, someone who had tried to hurt her. She could save them or leave them to suffer. She saved them. Another shift. A chance for power, for wealth, for everything she had ever wanted. All she had to do was step on someone else to get it. She refused. Again and again, the trial tested her. It showed her her darkest impulses, her hidden fears, her secret desires. It offered her easy paths and watched to see if she would take them. She never did. Finally, the test stopped. The room returned to its empty state, stood before her, and this time there was warmth in her eyes. The trial of heart is complete, she said. You have passed. Felt tears on her face. She had not realized she was crying. What did you see? She asked. When you tested me, what did you see? Came closer and cupped her face in her hands. I saw someone who has darkness inside them, as all beings do. I saw someone who knows that darkness, understands it, accepts it. She smiled. And I saw someone who chooses every day to be light instead. The doors opened. The court was waiting outside, eager for the results. His face fell when he saw them emerge together, hands intertwined. The trials are complete, announced to the crowd. Of Earth has passed all 3. She has proven her worth. Silence. Then slowly applause began, not from everyone but from enough. The human had done the impossible. Even those who hated her had to acknowledge what she had achieved. Stood in the center of the throne room, exhausted but alive, and smiled. She had survived. Against all odds, against every expectation, she had survived. Now came the hard part. Giving her answer. 3 days had passed since the trials, had spent most of them sleeping, recovering from the physical and mental exhaustion of what she had endured. Her body ached in places she did not know could ache. Her dreams were filled with stone warriors and burning villages and questions that had no easy answers. But now she was awake, and she was ready. The entire court had gathered once again in the great throne room. Word had spread across the empire that the human had survived the trials. Ships had come from distant worlds just to witness what would happen next. The hall was more crowded than had ever seen it. Empress sat on her throne, wearing robes of gold that matched the patterns on her skin. The crown of crystal rested on her head. She looked every inch the ruler of half the galaxy. But when her eyes found in the crowd, something softened. Director stood beside, wringing his hands. He had given up trying to influence her decision. Now he just looked tired and resigned to whatever came next. "This is it," he muttered. "Whatever you decide, the relationship between Earth and the Empire will never be the same." "I know," said. "If you say yes, you become a symbol. Every human in the galaxy will be judged by how you behave, what you do, who you become." "I know." "If you say no, you insult the Empress in front of her entire court. She might forgive you, but her nobles never will. Earth might suffer for it." "I know." Sighed, "Do you know what you are going to do?" Smiled, "Yes." A horn sounded, calling the court to attention. The murmuring of thousands of voices faded into silence. "Of Earth," announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Step forward." Walked through the crowd. They parted before her, making a path to the throne. She felt their eyes on her, felt their judgment, their curiosity, their hope or hatred. She ignored all of it. She stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked up at. The Empress gazed down at her, and in that moment they were the only two people in the universe. "You have completed the trials," said. "You have proven your strength, your wisdom, and your heart. By the ancient laws of our people, you have earned the right to stand beside the throne." Nodded but said nothing. "3 days ago I asked you a question." His voice wavered slightly, the first sign of emotion. "I asked if you were unattached. I asked if you might consider becoming my consort. You have had time to think. You have faced death and survived. Now I ask again." She rose from her throne and descended the steps, stopping just in front of, close enough to touch, close enough to hear her heart beating. Said softly, "Will you be mine?" The room held its breath. Looked at this woman, this Empress, this being who had lived for centuries and ruled empires. She saw the hope in those amber eyes, the fear of rejection, the vulnerability that no amount of power could hide. And she spoke. "No." Gasps filled the room, flinched as if struck. Her face went blank, the mask of the Empress falling into place to hide the pain. "I see," she said, her voice flat. "Then you have made your choice." "I am not finished," said. Froze. "I will not be your consort," continued. "I will not be a trophy, a symbol, a pretty human standing silently beside your throne while you rule. I will not be owned." Whispers rippled through the crowd, smiled thinking he had won. But said, and the whispers stopped, "I will be your partner." His eyes widened. "What?" Reached out and took her hands. They were warm as always, like holding captured sunlight. "You asked if I was unattached. The answer is yes, I am single. I have been for a long time, not because I could not find someone, but because I would not settle for less than I deserved." She squeezed fingers. "And neither should you." "I do not understand," said. "You want someone who will see you, not the crown. Someone who will tell you the truth, not what you want to hear. Someone who will stand beside you, not behind you." Stepped closer. "But to have that, you have to offer it in return. A partnership. Equals, not Empress and consort, just us." Stared at her. The court was deathly silent, trying to process what was happening. "Among my people," continued, "love is not given, it is built. It takes time, effort, trust. You have to learn each other, accept each other's flaws, grow together, she smiled. You asked me to be yours. I am asking you to become ours, to learn what human love means, to try something new. You are making demands, said slowly, of me, the Empress. Yes. No one makes demands of the Empress. Then consider it a request, a very strong request. Smile widened. From someone who walked through your trials and survived. Surely that earns me the right to ask for something in return. A long moment passed. The entire court seemed to lean forward, waiting. Then laughed. It was not the polite laugh of politics or the cold laugh of power. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised and genuine. It echoed through the hall, and for a moment she did not look like an empress at all. She looked like a woman who had just been given an unexpected gift. You impossible human, said. You wonderful, impossible creature. Is that a yes? Asked. That is a yes, raised their joined hands. I accept your terms. We will learn each other. We will build this together, not empress and consort, partners. The court erupted. Some cheered, some protested, looked like he had swallowed something bitter, but none of it mattered. Pulled close and kissed her. It was the first time had been kissed by an alien. It was not so different from being kissed by a human, she discovered. Warmer, perhaps, slightly tingly, but the feeling behind it was the same. Hope, promise, the beginning of something new. When they broke apart, was smiling. You know this will not be easy. My people do not change quickly. There will be resistance, challenges, hardship. I just fought a stone robot and looked into my own dark soul, said. I think I can handle politics. You might be surprised how much worse politics can be. Then it is a good thing I have a partner to face it with. Smile softened. Yes, it is. They turned to face the court together, hands still joined. The protests were dying down, replaced by uncertain acceptance. The human had proven herself. She had faced the trials and won. She had refused to be a trophy and demanded respect instead. Many of the nobles did not like it, but they could not deny she had earned her place. My people announced. Today marks a new chapter for our empire. For the first time in our history, a human stands beside the throne, not as a servant, not as a symbol, but as an equal. This is strange. This is frightening, but it is also an opportunity. She looked at and her voice softened. Humans have taught me something. They have shown me that strength is not just power. It is compassion. It is choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. It is helping a frightened child even when the whole universe is watching. Felt tears prick her eyes. We have much to learn from each other, continued. Humans and two species, different in so many ways, but perhaps not so different where it matters. She raised hand high. This is not an ending. This is a beginning. The first step on a journey neither of us can fully imagine. The crowd's response was mixed, but it was louder than before. More cheers, fewer protests, change, slow and uncertain but real. Later, in private chambers, they sat together by the window and watched the stars. When I first saw you, said, helping that servant girl, I felt something I had not felt in centuries. Hope, the belief that things could be different, better. Was that when you decided to ask me your question? That was when I decided I had to know you. The question came later when I realized that knowing you might not be enough. Turned to face her. I have lived so long, seen so much, but you make me feel like I am seeing the universe for the first time. Leaned against her, feeling the warmth of her skin, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. I am just a translator from a small town in Korea. I never imagined any of this. And yet here you are. Here I am. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, a comet streaked across the darkness, its tail blazing with light. The journey ahead will be difficult, said eventually. Many of my people will never accept you. Some will try to harm you. Our differences will cause problems we cannot predict. I know. You might regret this. I might, looked up at her. But I survived your trials. I faced my own darkness and chose light. I think I can handle whatever comes next." Together, together, smiled and pulled her closer. "Then let us begin." In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. Slowly at first, then faster. Humans and learned from each other, grew together, built bridges where walls had stood. It was not easy. There were setbacks, conflicts, moments when everything seemed about to fall apart. But it held. And at the center of it all, standing side by side, were an empress who had lived for centuries and a human who had been brave enough to say no. History would remember them as the founders of a new era, the first partners, the bridge builders, the ones who proved that compassion could change the universe. But to each other, they were simply two hearts that had found each other across the vast emptiness of space. Unattached no longer,